That kind of brings me on to my next question, which is how are you finding being able to find the sort of people that you need, skilled people that you need for your organisation? Is that a problem?
Well, we're quite lucky actually. We based ourselves in Oxford, and for some reason there seems to be a huge group of fairly clever people knocking around nearby. So we do okay from that, but it is a challenge. There's more jobs available than skills to fill them in this field, and the competition's pretty fierce. So it's important to create an environment where people want to come and work with you, where there's sufficient interesting challenges to get involved with, and where they're able to grow and learn. So that's a constant topic that we think about in our company, and of course every other company like ours does too. But that's one of the other reasons I think why the industry is so much fun to work in, that there is this huge competition, so people do make these efforts, so they are really great places to work in and be creative in.
And do you think that the education system is serving youngsters well at the moment? I mean, I know it's changed quite a lot, particularly in the last couple of years, the whole school curriculum on IT, etc., with Raspberry Pi, for example, coming along. I mean, what are your thoughts? Are new graduates coming through, up to the task of working in the industry?
Well, I'm optimistic. I have a little 2-year-old son, and he's already a whiz on my Samsung phone. He can get to animal sounds and play those to his heart's content. I think it's more and more baked into our society, all societies. I really wish they'd taught me to type at school. if I'm completely honest, I think that would be one of the greatest skills that they could pass on. And I think in most jobs now, that would be a real benefit. But I'm absolutely for teaching programming as a core curriculum subject, and anything really that helps students get on and up in this world. I think there is a potential gap if perhaps that's an area that's lacking. Then kind of kids who have a bit more access, or parents who are interested, will get an advantage over those that don't. So I think it's an area that definitely needs to grow, but I'm optimistic that it will do. I can't see that it wouldn't.
Now, one thing that's often criticised about IT projects is that they're mismanaged, etc. I mean, you had the old Connecting to Health with the health service several years ago. I mean, do you have any advice for would-be project managers on things that have happened to you yourself and your company that you could kind of give them some tips on?
Yeah, I mean, we've made a lot of mistakes, and we've had a few pretty disastrous projects over our time. I mean, I shouldn't go too far down that. We've had a lot of successful ones as well. I think the rise of more agile approaches to development have been really good. Get something out as quickly as you can, get it tested, work on it, grow it. Really any approach that takes those as the kind of axioms are going to work a lot better than huge waterfall type models for complex large projects. And we've seen some spectacular failures in large organizations trying to do the latter. I was watching something the other day actually on Obama's White House, and his approach taking in some Silicon Valley people as a bit of a task force in the US, which seems to be working well. And it's by no means limited to the UK government big IT failures. The Americans are very good at it too. But I think that's the right approach. Look to the Valley, look to what's going on in fintech in London and elsewhere in the UK. Look at what entrepreneurial creative startups are doing and learn from it. There's a lot of ideas flowing, there's a lot of new ways of doing things, of trying things out and seeing what works and what doesn't. And it's an area that changes often with technology as well. The two are intertwined. So it's not something that you can just rest on your laurels with. You need to continue to develop that as the technology develops.
I'm just wondering what your thoughts are in the UK in particular on entrepreneurship. I mean, are entrepreneurs encouraged in the UK, do you think?
It's interesting. So our chairman, Max Cantilia, who is based in Singapore and has a number of interests around the world, particularly in fintech companies, and has seen a lot work and a lot fail, and is involved in educational initiatives. And his perspective is that there's something about British culture that is absolutely right for entrepreneurship, and something about the way our education system works, perhaps, or just generally how our society works, that really encourages that kind of free thinking in a way that perhaps Asia Pacific type countries, maybe they're not quite there in a similar way. I see it all the time. I see creative ideas every day. But then I am surrounded by a lot of creative people in a creative industry, so I guess I would see that. But equally, I see it every day with my son as well as he plays, and I think it's really just a case of encouraging that and not suppressing that urge at any point in your education.
So what do you say makes a successful entrepreneur? Because obviously you're
I don't know if I'm qualified to say that really. I think actually, as much as ideas are important and luck and timing and those kind of things, grit is probably the biggest factor I've seen. Just getting on with it and working hard. Yeah.
So go back to your early career. How did you get involved in the original computer game Planet Futon?
Well, these were .com boom times,
right?
And it was post university, and I think we had a few £100 left on someone's overdraft. A friend of mine, Paul, who was also a co-founder of Aeriandi, and I thought it would be a great idea to move to Brighton and make a computer game and make piles of money at that. And we had a great time. I do remember a certain amount of creative workshops in the local pubs and bars around Brighton over the course of the summer. Lengthy workshops. And we had a great time. We made something we were relatively proud of. Had a good time doing. Also, over the course of the summer, I think that the .com crash happened. So I think we went from potentially living the life to maybe not quite affording a cost of coffee by the end of it. But I thoroughly recommend it to anyone. We had a whale of a time and learned a lot during the course of that. I learned how to program to some degree, and really that gave me enough on my CV to get into multimedia, and get a foot on the ladder in software in general.
Is that when you jumped ship and ended up at the MOD?
So that actually was just a summer job at university, and I had been working in bars and things for a couple of years, and I needed something a little bit better paid to support my term time activities, and I grew up in Weymouth in Dorset. There was a base down there. I think it was called Kinetic back then, and I just wrote them a letter and asked them whether I could come in and work with them for a summer, and they were kind enough to offer me a job, which was very interesting, and taught me quite a lot. Really huge data sets they're dealing with over a long period of time, and some really cool tech. So I enjoyed that.
Do you think there are enough IT apprenticeships about in the UK at the moment?
That's a good question. I don't know, to be honest. We haven't explored apprenticeships in our company yet, but it's something I think we would. I'm certainly in favour of them. I think hands-on experience is a wonderful thing in this area. So, I think maybe I'm the wrong person to ask whether there's enough or not, but we would certainly support them.
One of the problems the IT industry has had for quite a number of years now is attracting women into the organisations. I think at the moment it's 12 to 15% of women compared with men.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what do you think can be done about that? I mean, is it just the reputation the IT industry has got as being a bit geeky that's putting women off, or do you think there's other more deeper reaching problems?
It's a very good question. I mean, it is geeky. I mean, it's really, really geeky. There's particularly certain areas of it, but I don't think that's a bad thing at all. I mean, this is my own opinion, and I'm by no means any expert in this kind of psychology. But I would say that there aren't enough positive role models to look up to and aspire to be. And I think that the likes of really successful geeks like Elon Musk and some of the Silicon Valley crew will help over time. But I think that it needs to start earlier. I think girls can get put off science and maths quite early on, and science and maths is probably the most direct path to this world, which is a great shame. It's a great shame because there's a huge amount of untapped talent out there, and I'm hopeful that will be tapped at some point in the future. I certainly hope as my son grows up that his generation don't get cast into a similar situation.
One question I ask pretty much everybody is, at the moment, I mean, the IT industry is quite a new industry. It's only about 55 years old, really. There seems to be sometimes a call for more professionalism within the industry, and BCS obviously is one of the champions of that. Obviously doctors have their medical counsel, and accountants and lawyers have to answer. It could be struck off registers, etc. I mean, do you think we should have something similar for the IT industry, or do you think it should be more of a voluntary code of conduct?
It's a very good question, and certainly there's a lot of IT work and programming work that happens that's incredibly important and potentially dangerous if it's done wrong. The software covers all industries now, from health to the security forces, military, banking, every walk, and it's phenomenally easy to leave security holes in systems if you're not doing your job properly. And that goes right the way from junior programmers and people starting out all the way through the management layers, architects, and ultimately companies that are selling these offerings and may or may not be misrepresenting the quality of work that they're doing. There are standards that are coming out, voluntary standards, but these standards are becoming more necessary to companies such as ourselves, simply to win business. So I'm thinking of ISO 27001, 20000, and recently we've put ourselves onto the CSA Star register, which you may be familiar with, and would absolutely encourage any customers or companies out there looking for services to go and look up the vendors on the CSA Star website, and there they publish how they protect their systems and what measures are taken. So I'm very pro this kind of approach. I think there may be opportunity to look at professional qualifications around this area. But equally, as you said, it's 55 years old, it's changing all the time, so it may not quite be clear yet what form they should and would take. And going back to a previous point, these kind of qualifications and certifications are useless if they're there for the sake of them being there, and they're also useless if they don't follow the current risk factors or trends or technology. So it may be a challenging area to approach in those terms. But maybe you could look at similar professions where technology changes the scope, such as medicine, and see how they keep doctors on top of their game. So yes, I'd be very interested to see what happens in that area.
And looking forward, where do you see yourself and your company in 5-10 years' time?
Good question. Obviously on a beach with a margarita. I think we'll continue to push out there internationally. We'll continue to work with some of the biggest telcos, and I think we'll see a shift to dealing with small to medium enterprise and even consumers, along with the enterprise type accounts that we're servicing mainly today. I think there'll be new compliance legislation and security standards that we'll get involved in. And I hope that we'll be in a position to help drive some of those standards and to give some input into how they might be.
You mentioned not enough role models for girls, women working in IT. Who is a role model for you as you came through?
Well, I should actually point out that I wouldn't restrict that to women. I think there aren't enough role models in general. Certainly when I was thinking about career choices and what to study and that kind of thing, my first thought wasn't famous programmers or people that I'd ever come across that were in that world. I didn't really understand much about what IT was, what software is. So I think that's a general point. Now I've totally forgotten your other questions. Excuse me.
It's all right. Two kind of last questions. I'm curious to another question I ask pretty much everybody is, what sort of technologies that have come out in the last 5-6 years have most impressed you?
Mm-hmm. So there's some really, really cool big data solutions that have been coming out, particularly in the open source environment. So I'm thinking of Elasticsearch and technologies that underpin that. and a number of the technologies that have spilled out of the valley and out of some of the big consumer type products that exist out there, like Facebook. So my particular field is front end programming and user interface design. I've been really into a technology called React, which is a JavaScript framework that Facebook have produced and put out into the public domain, which is absolutely phenomenal. Just absolutely phenomenal if you're into that kind of thing. I think I've been most impressed with what the community's been doing and what these big companies have been doing to help the community. And that extends right the way across the board. We use a lot of open source technologies in our telephony stacks and work as well. I don't think we could do what we do without these movements.
And I hear you're a fan of electronic music and write some yourself. Do you still do that?
When I get the chance. I've been working on an album for the last 10 years and with a friend of mine, and I think we worked out at our present rate of production we've got another 10 years to go. So about halfway through that. It gets a bit trickier when you've got little ones demanding your attention, who are much more important.
So is this experimental electronica?
Yeah, avant-garde jazz, that kind of thing. No, it's a little bit more mainstream than that. But we play around. I mean, it's for our own enjoyment.
Thank you very much for your time, chap.
Thank you.